Welcome, dear students. This is the history video, and in the first unit of history, there are three chapters: the rise of nationalism in Europe, the nationalist movement in Indochina, and nationalism in India. Out of these three, we have to study two chapters. So we will be covering the rise of nationalism in Europe and nationalism in India, which is compulsory. Okay. So as we proceed to European nationalism, here you come across one important painting made by Frederick Surio. Sometime a picture may come in examination, so they can show you this painting and ask you certain questions. So let me brief you up. What is this painting all about? Remember, the first print of the series that shows the people of Europe and America, men and women of all ages and social classes, marching in a long train and offering homage to the Statue of Liberty as they pass by it. You can see a Statue of Liberty. A female figure was shown with the torch of enlightenment in one hand and the Charter of Rights of Man in the other. Charter here means a rule and regulation, written rule and regulation. On the earth, in the foreground of the image, lie the shattered remains of the symbols of absolutist institutions. You can see in the front foreground, shattered pieces of some objects are lying. They represent absolutist institutions which are shattered because of democracy. In Suryo's utopian vision, the people of the world are grouped as distinct nations, identified through their flags and national costume. You can see very clearly in the picture that lot of flags are shown. Now each flag represent a nation. Not only flag, but the people who are carrying flag, they are also wearing their own native costumes. And up in the sky you see God and all the angels. They are happy to see this great change coming upon this earth, where the monarchy system is completely removed and democratic system is established. So you can see that some are still in a long train of line, and some they have crossed the Statue of Liberty. They have crossed the Statue of Liberty means those nations have become democratic now. But rest of the nation, they are on their way. Some are about to reach, some are little bit far away, but very soon they will also cross the Statue of Liberty, where those nations will have democratic system. They will going to remove monarchy. They will going to bring to an end the rule of kings and the queens. In their place, they will establish parliamentary system. They will establish democratic system. Okay. Now definitely the question arises, what is nationalism? What is nationalism? राष्ट्रवाद किसे कहते हैं? What is nationalism? You know, nationalism is a feeling of belonging and loyalty that causes people to think of themselves as a nation. So we have to understand nationalism is a type of emotional feeling of that we belong, a feeling of belonging, and loyalty. Loyalty means to be faithful to our own country, and that causes people to think of themselves as a nation, as a country. So during 19th and 20th centuries, nationalism was a powerful force. Remember, during 19th and 20th century, the idea of nationalism was a powerful force, and nationalism rightly opposed the monarchy system. So it was a powerful force that could, number one, create one nation from many separate countries. Example of Italy and Germany that we will study. How they were separate countries, but they were brought as one nation. And on the other hand, we see break one nation up into many countries like Austria-Hungary and Turkey. They were further divided, but each divided portion became a nation. Our take the example of our own country. At the time when we got our independence in 1947, our country was divided into two nations. Okay, Pakistan and India. So the idea of nationalism, it is a type of feeling of belonging and loyalty that causes people to think of themselves as nation. So emergence of nationalism in Europe. How it had its emergence. Emergence here means the gradual progress of the idea of nationalism. How it all started, it had its beginning. So we find that during the 19th century, nationalism brought about sweeping changes in political and mental world of Europe. Political and mental world of Europe. Remember the idea of nationalism, it brought a sweeping change. The idea of absolutism, the idea of monarchy, the idea of empires and emperor and emperors, all these things were getting old, and people were coming up with new political idea of parliamentary system, of national assembly, of political parties, of elections, of democratic system. Nation states emerged in place of multinational dynastic empires of Europe. And see, I told you, multinational dynastic empires of Europe. Europe was divided into dynastic empires, but nationalism brought an end to all these dynastic empires in Europe. It all started in 19th century. The concept of a modern state had been developing over a long period of time in Europe. So the concept of modern state here means a state which is not ruled by any monarch. Even if monarch is there, it has to work under parliamentary system. This idea was developing over a long period of time in Europe. So nation state is one in which the majority of its citizens and not only its rulers come to develop a sense of common identity and shared history or a descent which were forged through struggles, actions of leaders and the common people. Remember, the idea of nation state, the idea of citizens, rulers, and they all coming in agreement to a common identity, sharing the same history, same descent. Descent means same past, and forged through struggles. These struggles means when you bring political changes, actions of leaders and common people. So during this nation state, many leaders, they became popular. They came out with wonderful ideas of nation state. So we have to understand that nationalism, the idea of nationalism which was brought in Europe, it took at least 200 years to bring changes in political and mental system of Europe. So we will begin with the French Revolution in 1789. Remember, you read about French Revolution in class 9th also. In 10th also, we will have a light over this important revolution. The first clear expression of nationalism came with the French Revolution in 1789. The idea of nation state, the idea we belong to one country, this all started with the French Revolution in 1789. France was a full-fledged territorial state in 1789 under the rule of an absolute monarch. Absolute monarch means dictators, Tanashaha, dictators. The political and constitutional changes that came in the wake of French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to a body of French citizens. A body of French citizens means a national assembly, a parliament. Okay, so we find political and constitutional changes were brought because of French Revolution. The French revolutionaries introduced various measures and practices that could create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people, like the idea of la patrie means the fatherland and les citoyens means the citizen. So how this sense of collective belonging was created among the French people? Number one important point is the idea of la patrie, the fatherland, and the idea of les citoyens, the citizen. Another important point, a new French flag, the tricolor, was chosen to replace the former royal standard. Royal standard means the royal flag. The Estates General was elected by the body of active citizens and renamed the National Assembly. Remember, in class 9 you studied about General Estate or Estates General, where three categories: the church, the aristocrats, and the common people, the peasants were there. So when French Revolution came, this Estates General was renamed as National Assembly and the people were elected by active citizens. New hymns were composed, oaths taken, and martyrs commemorated, all in the name of the nation. New hymns means national hymns, patriotic songs, देश भक्ति के गीत, oaths taken, शपथ खाना देश के लिए, martyrs commemorated, शहीदों को याद किया जाने लगा, all in the name of nation. Then a centralized administrative system formulated uniform laws for all citizens within its territory. Uniform laws were introduced for all the citizens within its territory. Internal custom duties and dues were abolished. A uniform system of weights and measures was adopted, which is very important. French, as it was spoken and written in Paris, became the common language of nation by discouraging regional dialects. The last point, it talks about how the French language, which was spoken in Paris, was imposed upon entire nation. Okay, so these were some of the initial steps taken to create a sense of belonging, to create the idea of nation state. Now here is another important topic in this chapter. It is about Napoleon Bonaparte. Remember, he was a French emperor. Napoleon set about introducing many of the reforms in the territories that came under his control that he had already introduced in France. He introduced Napoleonic Code. Okay, so Napoleon Bonaparte is very important. The topic is very important in this chapter. So let us try to understand what were the Napoleonic codes, or what reformation or changes Napoleon brought about not only in France but in all those territories of Europe where he went and won those territories and brought under his control. Okay, so it is basically called Civil Code of 1804. The question may come, what do you mean by Civil Code of 1804? So it is usually known as the Napoleonic Code. Okay, so let us see what these codes were and what were the changes he brought in not only France but in rest of the Europe. See, number one, he did away with all the privileges based on birth. Very important for us to understand, he did away with all the privileges based on birth, established equality before the law, and secured the right to property. Remember, these things are very, very crucial and important. Okay, first he did away with all the privileges based on birth. Those who were born in the first and second estate, they had the privileges of not paying any tax, any type of tax. So Napoleon Bonaparte removed this privilege. Now everyone was to pay the tax. Establish equality before the law. When there were three estates, when there were three groups in France, the first and the second state, they always assumed that they were above the law. But Napoleon Bonaparte introduced equality before the law and secured the right to property. Private property, that was not a thing during that time. No one could claim that property was his or her. It all belonged to the state. But he introduced the right to property. Now, after introducing these changes in France, he exported these reformations to the regions under French control. Okay. So, in the Dutch Republic, or in Switzerland, or in Italy and Germany, Napoleon simplified administrative divisions, then abolished the feudal system and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. This is very important point for this topic. Napoleon simplified administrative division. Who will be the collector, who will be the magistrate, who will be the other officer, all these are called administrative division. So he simplified it. He abolished the feudal system, okay, and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. I won't tell you on these things at present because you have already studied in class 9th. Transport and communication systems were improved. So Napoleon focused upon improving transport and communication system. In the towns too, guild restrictions were removed. You know what were guilds? Guilds were the union of particular people. Like goldsmith had their own union, silversmith had its own union, carpenters, they had their own union. So these guild systems didn't allow the new businessman or new entrepreneur to join and to start business. So these were the guild restrictions imposed upon the people. So Napoleon Bonaparte removed all these guild systems from the towns. Peasants, artisans, workers and new businessmen enjoyed a newfound freedom. Because of this guild restriction, removing of guild restriction, now artisans and workers, new businessmen, they enjoyed. They really felt so happy. Now they can do their business freely. Okay, so spread of nationalism to other parts of Europe. When the news of events in France reached different cities of Europe, students and other members of educated middle classes began setting up Jacobin clubs. The French armies moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland and much of Italy in 1790s. And with the outbreak of revolutionary wars, the ideas of nationalism spread abroad. Abroad here means out of France. So here you can see the one of the portrait of Napoleon Bonaparte. Now let me tell you one important thing, that in spite of all the good reforms which Napoleon Bonaparte introduced not only in France but in Europe, still after some time people started disliking him. After all, he was a monarch, he was a dictator. Though he was not like the dictators of the past, he was modern, he was open to new ideas. But still people resented him. Resented means they got angry with him. Okay, now what were the reasons? Why did people start disliking Napoleon? Number one, loss of political freedom. All those places which were brought under his control, the old kings and princes were removed. Okay, and that political freedom to form associations, to form new parties, it was all stopped. It was banned. So people got angry with Napoleon. Another thing, Napoleon increased the taxes upon the people because he was busy in expanding his empire, so he needed a lot of money for the war. So he kept on increasing different types of taxes, so people got annoyed. Then censorship of news and views. This is very important. He didn't allow the media to publish anything which was questionable. He just felt that I should control the media and will not allow anything which they speak against me or against my administration. This is called censorship. This is a very dangerous thing, because when you censor the media or the news or the views, what you are basically doing is you are creating a dictatorship rule. You do not want that people should criticize you, they should criticize your policies which are wrong. Now Napoleon was like that. So people just felt that what news is being produced, it was all controlled, edited, censored by the Napoleon government. Forced conscription into French army to fight wars. This is another important reason why people were dissatisfied with Napoleon. He forced the recruitment of people from different parts of Europe to join army. Many boys, many young people were not interested, but they were forced so that they can go out to fight wars. Because of these important four reasons, people began to dislike Napoleon Bonaparte. They resented him. Okay?